Hello everyone, my name's Kathryn Wallace and I'm going to be co-presenting today with Dr. Stephen Price, and we're LAS advisors in the Learning and Academic Skills Centre, and we're going to be talking about the LAS drop-in hub, the benefits. Firstly, a little bit about the LAS Centre. Our mission is to value add to the educational experience of students by empowering them with the learning strategies and skills to ensure academic success at Swinburne. We embrace the pedagogy of best practice teaching, which we're continually morphing in recognition of the changing educational affordances and students' personal learning plans. We support an increasingly diverse student cohort, that is international students, local students, mature age students, non-English speaking students, English speaking students and students with accessibility issues. We try to reach as many students who need our help as we possibly can by offering a wide variety of learning assistance in as many different ways as possible. Our service includes short courses and 1-hour workshops, which is on things like essay writing, report writing, effective note-taking, referencing and oral presentations. We also do individual and small group consultations when students come and see us. We run a daily conversation group for international students where we teach them about Australian culture and social language. We also have a bank of online resources that you can access on the LAS website, and of course we run LAS drop-in consultations, which I'm going to be going into more depth. What sort of students do we see? We see students that come to us with a one-off problem. I just need you to help me with this and I'll be right, and we don't see them again. We help them once and we don't see them again. Then we see students that need us to lead them through the process. This is how you read the assessment question. This is the marking guide. This is what you need to do, and they might come and see us on a weekly basis all the way through to this is how you submit your assessment. There's another sort of student that we were seeing, and they were coming up to LAS and they were knocking on the door. I just need some help. It's due in 2 hours or an hour. I just need 5 minutes. I just can't wait. Now, how could we accommodate those students? What we did in 2015 was we created the LAS pop-up advice and evening advice desk, which quickly segued into LAS drop-in hub. What it was there was no booking required. You could drop in, have a 15-minute session, get those immediate questions answered, and off you go and hand it in or submit it. We trialled various locations. We were trying to be in a student-centric area and an area with a high pedestrian student traffic. We also needed other services and infrastructure to draw the students in. So other services in terms of the computer rovers who could help with any virtual learning environment technologies problems, and we needed the infrastructure. We needed the Wi-Fi, we needed the computers, we needed the laptops, we needed the PowerPoints, we needed the desks. We needed a physical, workable learning space. And location. The location also had to be in an area that was conducive to students studying. So we found the best place for this was the library, and that is where we are today. We trialled different opening hours, and now if you go to the library, late lab area, 12 noon to 8 p.m, Monday to Thursday, 12 noon to 4 p.m. on a Friday, and for restricted hours during semester breaks, you'll find the LAS drop-in hub. We have one LAS advisor at the desk at the LAS drop-in hub, and we also have 2 student learning assistants, and we call them SLAs. And these SLAs are high-performing Swinburne students, and they come and they sit alongside us, and this means that we can extend the number of students that we see in any given time. These students are also an asset to the students we're helping because they are conversant with the contemporary virtual learning environment, and they've got up-to-date study skills because they're still studying. So it's perfect. They can share their skills with the students. They also are able to earn rewards through Swinburne's own Emerging Leaders program. Thank you for listening to me. Now I'm going to pass you on to Dr. Stephen Price. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Kathy. I think that's working. I'm just going to quickly overview some of the data that we've collected regarding the service that we provide. And we're focusing particularly on the advantages of the physical location and aspects of this provision. So the data's been collected from semester 1 2015, which is when we began. There is inconsistency in the data and in the mode of collection. Some of the data entries weren't made when they're supposed to, so I'm using the data in a kind of rough sort of approximation as to the indications that emerge from it, and I'm also drawing on our own experience to flesh out what some of the data might actually mean. But we are underway in collecting more quantitative and qualitative data. We actually have a project underway at the moment. First of all, just the attendance, and you can see from this that the green shows the actual number of students that attended, and the blue shows the number of consultations. It's just interesting to note that the student numbers, the actual students have increased, but the consultations have increased at a greater rate, which obviously suggests that more and more students are returning for more than one session. And obviously the growth also is to do with the fact that we are becoming known. This particular service is entering into students' consciousness. We can look to it how the numbers break down week by week. Each of the semesters, blue is semester 1, 2015, the green, semester 2, 2015, and then the black is semester 2, 2016. And we have a peak early in the semester. This is obviously because practically all the units set an assignment early in the semester so they can find out which students might be struggling or not. So we get quite a lot of students seeking advice at that particular stage, but then it begins to level out. The drop there is to do with the break, so we ignore that. But there are new students that continue to drop in, but clearly we also begin to get a little bit of a build-up of students returning to us as well. How do students, it's interesting to look at how students become aware of us. I found this particular information interesting because students seem to, their awareness of us seemed to come largely through flyers which were in the library, either from their lecturers or tutors and from friends, which struck me as quite significant in that it's students are registering our service when they are informed, actually in a context where they're already thinking about their learning. And in other contexts, we've had advertisements all around the campus, and we've done other things on Blackboard and Swinburne Online. These seem to register actually very little. So the context of how we're promoting this is obviously quite significant, and I'll return to this at a later point as well. The kinds of students that we get, well, as already mentioned, a whole range of students. Predominantly, we get NES B students, students from a non-English speaking background. These could be international students and they can be migrant students. We get students from, we have a lot of mature age students, and here again there can be a lot of, we can have a lot of migrant students who have had interrupted education in their home countries perhaps, who arrived here, entered into the workforce, and then decided that they wanted to resume education. So we have quite a lot of mature age students, and also anecdotally we have students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds as well. The year of study, perhaps particularly, is mostly first-year students. And we've discovered this only shows the proportions. Afternoons, semester one, we only offered it in the afternoon. Semester two, we had an equal number afternoon and evening, but I should note that the actual afternoon numbers were the same as they were in semester one. So we practically doubled the number of students that were attending in semester two in 2015. Semester 1, 2016, we had a further increase in the number of students, but there was a greater proportion attended in the afternoon. And so far, the indications are for semester 2, we're having quite a larger proportion arriving during the afternoons. But the numbers are overall increasing. So the evenings are not particularly declining, they're just becoming smaller as a proportion of the overall number of students that we're getting. And the faculty of origin, as might be expected again, is largely, students are largely from FBL and FHAD. These are the faculties, of course, which are word intensive, if you like. And so we would expect to get more students from those particular faculties. Okay, so just a quick kind of commentary on the data. First of all, what we've seen is perhaps to be expected. More NESB students from the writing intensive faculties, first year students and so on. However, I think there are some other interesting features which emerge from the data, and I just want to point out a few of those. First of all, I want to point out how the location, when we moved to the library after semester 1, 2015, we were in Swinnergy, and then we moved to the library semester 2, and that's where the numbers increased quite considerably. We've also learned that, of course, students are able to capitalize on our service in conjunction with other services that they're using. And this is particularly advantageous for the drop-in, as opposed to making individual appointments to see us, which is the other service that we offer. So students can be actually in process or on an assignment in the library with friends, or they can be researching the library, and they hit a hurdle. And they know that we're there, and this is what's often happening. Students are actually coming to the drop-in and saying, look, I'm just trying to do this. Are you able to tell me if I'm on the right track? And so we can provide this immediate feedback for students as they are in the process of actually learning, which is not something we can provide with the our consultations that we provide, which they have to book in advance, and they can often be a week or two before they're able to see us. The importance here, I think, too, is that we are in a highly visible location, and students are walking around the library, particularly students who are trying to do work. And so, again, we are attractive to those students who are already interested in trying to get on with their studies. And as I actually mentioned earlier, those are the students who are actually noticing the information about our service when the lecturers announce this, or flyers in the library. So I think that it's not just the physical aspect and the higher visibility and the ease of access, it's also that students are also, if you like, in a pedagogic space. And we are able to plug into that as well, which I think is quite important. And because we're combined with these other resources, it's adding an extra richness to the drop-in, which we wouldn't be able to get if we were isolated elsewhere and students knew they could go there if they needed to. It's all of these particular resources that they are actually taking advantage of are able to work in conjunction together. And the students are able to use them, which is another point to make, of course, is that students are able to develop, or they are developing their own particular learning space. And they are learning how to integrate this into the ways in which they want to try to go about their assignments or actually engaging with their studies. The other important aspect, of course, of the physicality is that students are able to drop in. And I think this is particularly important. We work with students on, in fact, developing skills. It's not just a cognitive process, but students were able to sit with a student, explain, for instance, what an introduction is to an assignment, ask them to go away and say, look, have a go at writing your introduction, and I'll see you in 45 minutes. And they can return, and then we can give them feedback. And this sort of apprenticeship, in a way, we're able to work with them, send them off, they have a go, they return, we discuss that with them, is, I think, quite important for the development of students, which would be much harder to do, I think, is much harder to do online and in a virtual space. Okay, I'll just move on to the next slide. We're almost at a time. I think it's important to note how students use us. Some students are using us simply as a plug the gap. I have some referencing here. Can you check if it's right? And then we never see them again. They just want to have a particular question and answers. Others are using it at particular moments in their writing, but they are returning, and often returning at the same sort of moment in the writing process. And that's often, they've completed the essay, can you check my essay? Which isn't really what we do, but they seem to find it hard to understand that. Other students are actually using us, are integrating us into a whole learning process. And they've learned to start to use us to help interpret assignments. What's the task asking? We can have a look at an outline that they develop, we can look at a draft, we can look at their conclusion, and they've begun to realize that they can use our service to help to guide them through the whole process of actually writing assignments. And this is where, I mean, it's interesting, we do have this distinction between students who have a very instrumental approach to their learning and others who are trying to engage with the discipline and the concepts that they're trying to learn. So it's actually very gratifying to find that there are some students who use this in that particular way. And I think that for those particular students, the drop-in is actually a great asset. Okay, is the time up? Okay, look, I'll have to stop. I was going to mention how we integrate with the virtual environments, but that's less important because it is the physical space that we're emphasizing here.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen and Kathryn. That was really interesting, and I think it's really important for those of us who are doing learning and teaching in subjects to be aware of the student experience and what's available for students. Any questions?
Sorry. Does LAS exist on the other campuses, so also at Wantirna and Croydon? And do you also have any ties with, say, Sarawak in any way?
It exists on other campuses here, but there isn't a drop-in service. At the time, there isn't a drop-in service. No, we have the possibility of us working with Sarawak has been explored from time to time, but we do not actually work with Sarawak, nor do we work with Seoul, Swinburne Online students. It's purely a logistics issue. I mean, we're flat out as it is with students here on campus. But we are available to our students actually online and through email, and so they don't have to be here to use us, although it's interesting, we get very few students who actually take us up on that. They prefer to have, to actually be with us in a physical space.
I sort of got one question and one comment. As a lecturer academic, I find there's less and less consultation consultations. Previous years we'd have students sort of lining up in the corridor and coming to ask you questions. But it seems to be a more informal approach after lectures in the corridor. And maybe I'm thinking that they're starting to maybe use your service. Rather than the traditional, let's go knock on the academics door, let's get some general guidance, because perhaps the lecturer, and I'm a good example where I'll say, I can have a quick skim through your assignment, but really I can't double mark, because I'll tell you what to hit upon and then you'll think, why didn't I get the HD? But if I could send them to get the general guidance to your drop-in centre, I think that's maybe helping to replace the traditional consultations that a lot of us academics would have traditionally had. Yeah. And then the quick comment is, would you appreciate maybe academics dropping in for 15 or 20 minutes, sort of the content experts, so you could advertise, information systems, there's a drop-in section for an hour or so, or other disciplines, because I'm from FBL and that's one of your highest sort of markets.
So you're suggesting that we have an academic with us and students are able to drop in for that particular assignment?
Yeah.
I think that would be an excellent idea. I mean, it could be the case that students aren't coming to you and are coming to us, but we certainly insist that we cannot help them with the content. So if they are wanting feedback on the actual substance of their arguments, I mean, we can certainly, and this is our role, we would say, look, your argument isn't clear, or you haven't really answered the question, and aspects around that. But with respect to providing feedback on the content itself, I think it could be really good to have that, double feedback for students. And if you were interested, we could actually try to arrange a time, and I suppose particularly around the time that you have an assignment, say the week before.
Yep, that's right.
You could have tutors there for several of the days during the week for half an hour or whatever, or an hour. Or
particularly more. For the big first year units.
Yes.
And the core units. Yeah. I think it'd be very helpful, rather than us seeing the end result where perhaps they haven't seen you, and then we get the assignment and it's so poor quality. And you can give constructive feedback as much as you want, but really if it had been this duality type thing with your drop-in, with the academic there, they're on a better pathway straight away.
Yeah, I think that would be, I think we need to speak about that. I think that would be very good. Yeah.
One more question. I think there's a good collaboration to go on here. And maybe
we're always interested in these collaborations
maybe we
too.
can, yes. Okay.
I'm one of the reference librarians and we're constantly directing students to you. We have the same sorts of issues about saying, look, I can help you find research, but I can't help you with your content. If you want to know about how to structure, go to these guys and we walk them to your desk. We're very grateful to have you there. But we would love to have lecturers actually being able to provide assistance with the content. We can help them find research, but we can't interpret it for them.
Yes, well, I think establishing a time for that would be terrific. And as I said before, having us in the library enables students just to walk 30 metres, if even that, to ask us a question. And they're able to address these issues when they're at the forefront of their mind, which I think is really important, because we often have students who make an appointment, they actually come to us, and they've half forgotten what the issues were that they were even concerned about.
This may be one way with the service and the workload, where you could have academics actually using up, putting some hours into their service through their workload, doing these type of activities. So there's another discussion, maybe I should have with the head of department. This is another way for a lot of academics to add some hours in, where you were trying to find hours to fill.
I think it's a great idea, so thank you very much for that. And I think if we began to work with you and then we expand it once we've worked out a good way of organising all this and making it work.
We look forward to hearing the results of all of that at next year's Learning and Teaching Conference.
All right.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Kathryn.